Okay, welcome back, everybody. Okay, Nick, can you go ahead and share the screen again? Appreciate it. That is perfect. Okay, so as we're going through the rest of the day and kind of hitting some of the major points of House Bill 33, um, just kind of focusing ourselves that this is a continuation of Ohio's plan to raise literacy. So that is still what we're working through, but we're getting really down to the details of this and not any longer at this really high level learning. We're now really getting down to the nitty gritty. And as we're working and planning in our districts, we need to be thinking about that theory of action. So making sure that all of our kids from preschool all the way to grade 12, and we're thinking about the whole child. And because we can't do this work alone, we're really looking at that shared leadership is going to be really important to help move the work. It can't live with one person. It's too big of a job. And so we really need to rely on our colleagues within our districts. We're really refining that multi-tiered sensory of support of how we're going to support and close gaps quickly with kids. And while we're doing that, we're building capacity. And I'm going to add to this one, it's not just teacher capacity, but we need to develop leadership capacity. All right, it's very difficult to be an instructional leader if you don't have the capacity yourself. So we need to constantly be learning. I kind of think about this. We work in these cathedrals of learning. The children should not be the only ones learning. You know, I have always said that when I finally reach the point where I know it all and don't have anything else to learn, it's probably time for me to get out. Okay, because there's always things to learn. And then we want to make sure that we are also bringing our family and communities alongside of us through this work. Again, so things are not siloed and we're involving our whole community and families. Okay, and we'll skip the video for today. I don't know if you're aware that the new DEW, formerly the Ohio Department of Education, has a new website. Their logo looks like this. It's called Read Ohio. So they have a lot of resources in here that might be useful to districts. Has anybody looked at this site at all?
Briefly, Debbie.
Briefly. So I'm seeing some yeses. Good. Some. Okay, so they have a lot of things here. I just didn't know how much we needed to go over this. If you haven't had the opportunity, I would highly suggest that you go to this. If you just type Read Ohio on the Ohio Department's education website, it pops right up. There is a whole section on the science of reading. There is a whole section on if you're a district that is transferring from balanced literacy to science of reading, they've got some trainings in there and some supports. It has tons of resources. It has a bit of a scope and sequence if you want to kind of break it down on things that you want to focus on. So I highly recommend that you take a look at this site. It's continuing to develop as resources become available and as they are developed, as you, I'm sure, are all experiencing the kind of feedback that we're getting when we ask questions. It's like, it's coming. Okay, it's coming, it's coming. We've heard that so many times. So the district is, or the state department is working very, very hard to put these resources together. Okay, if we could go on to third grade reading guarantee. I don't know that we need to spend much time on here, but if we do, please stop me. But the promotion score for the 23-24 school year has raised to 690. Proficient is 700, which we've been on that pathway. It raises every year. That alternate assessment ELA subscore is 48. So those are the two pathways to officially being promoted on to fourth grade. However, the new exemption, a parent can request an exemption as they partner with the school district, the teachers and leaders. If they want their child to move on, they have every right to have them move on. Something new in the third grade guarantee is that there must be some kind of a statement that connects the child's proficiency level in reading to long-term outcomes of success related to proficiency in reading. So when we get into the RIMS, which we know that any child K through grade 3 and now grade 4 who is not reading proficiently is required to have a RIMP, which you all know. But we must provide that pathway as what is the plan for the district to get those kids at grade level. So that is something new. We can go on to the next one. Please stop me if you have questions. So it's required for all students not on track. You know that you have 60 days. We know about the intervention and support services that must be provided to all of those kids outside of their core instruction. We must progress monitor. We have to make sure that we have opportunities for parental involvement beyond just signing it. And then we're going to talk a bit. I have got a lot of emails and phone calls around the high dosage tutoring. So we're going to have some conversation around that. And I'm going to just be very, very transparent. I probably know no more about this than you do. Okay, so we're all learning this together. We have not gotten much guidance from the department as of yet. It's in development stage. But I do think it might be important to have some conversations together as districts as how are you thinking about this and how are you framing it? How are you going to provide it? What services are you going to use? What curriculum? So I think that maybe we can learn from each other here. I know I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say. The RIMS also need to extend to fourth grade who are not reading at grade level, so a score of 700. So if a child had a RIMP in third grade and they do not have that proficient score of 700, they're going to have that RIMP going into fourth grade. There is a new RIMP form being created, but it is not ready. But that doesn't mean that we don't create the RIMP. So my conversation with the department has said that districts can create, and you may already have created your own RIMP form. That is absolutely fine. You can continue with that and just move it along for your fourth grade. But as far as an example that the department will provide, that is not ready yet. But we still need to go ahead and write them. You can use your own document. You can extend the K3 RIMP document that is available. You can use that as well, but it needs to extend to our fourth graders and how we're going to get them to grade level. Next year it will be fourth and fifth grade. So it's going to continue to follow those kids until they score proficient on the state tests. Any conversation for the good of the group on this that you wanted to talk about, or?
Is there any conversation about like districts being able to use a different assessment outside of the state test to prove that a student is reading proficiently?
As far as fourth grade on up, my understanding is no, as of right now. Could that change? Yes. But when we asked that specifically, we were down with the department last week. We asked that question and they said for fourth grade on up, it is the state test.
I'm sorry, Debbie, I missed that. If you score 700 in fourth, then you don't need the RIMP in fifth. You're done, and then you're done for the rest of your life. Unless you go, what happens in sixth if I'm back down to 690? Do I go back on a RIMP?
That's a great question. I don't know. I do believe, I mean, my understanding is once they have demonstrated that they're reading on grade level, they should be fine. But that is a great question, Christine, and I am not going to pretend I have an answer for that because I really don't know. Any other comments or conversation for the good of the group around the RIMS? Okay, so let's go on to the high dosage tutoring. All right, this one we are going to pause for some conversation just because of the amount of emails and calls I'm getting on this. The high dosage tutoring, which is in law, by the way, so it is not, if you want to, it is written into law. All right, so that our students who are on RIMS and not reading at grade level must have an opportunity for high dosage tutoring. What that means is this is above and beyond what they may be receiving in tier 2 or tier 3 intervention. This is on top of that. And according to the guidelines for high dosage tutoring, it's 3 days a week, or it's not both, that's an or, 50 hours over 36 weeks.
I have a question about that. For the 3 days a week, how many minutes each of those days? What's considered a tutoring session,
I believe it's,
time-wise?
I believe it's 30 minutes, but again, I think we're waiting for some clarification on that. And it was probably due, my guess is also there's some flexibility depending on what vendor intervention you're using. So if their intervention, if they've got this 3 day a week plan and the lessons are, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever that may be, I follow the vendor's requirements for that as well. Okay. Now, this has to be from the state approved vendor, or you can also do your locally approved opportunity. So if you've got something that you have in your district that is successful and it may not be on that vendor list, your district can go ahead and keep moving forward with that. However, it must be aligned to reading science. It must be aligned to classroom instruction, so it can't be something totally different. And we know that's not good practice anyway. And it must be aligned with how high tutoring basic practices, okay, which again will be outlined. There is some outlining on the department, and also any program that you may purchase will also have some outlines for that as well.
Deb, is this during the day or after school?
That is completely up to districts to determine that. Best practice would be, say, it would be during the day. I'll just throw out my personal opinion on that. I personally feel like children should not be deprived recess or specials because that may be the only part of their day that they're successful. I also feel like they are already struggling, so they are working so hard that they need that break for recess and lunch. We all need that. If we're working on something very difficult, we need to take breaks, and our kids are no different. So that becomes problematic. It's like, so when do we do it? We can't pull them out of core. We really shouldn't deny them their recess or their music and art and phys ed. When do we do this? I have no answers for you, by the way. I'm sorry, but I just don't. It's something we're going to have to figure out together. To look at maybe some models that are working in other districts. We can try things and then share them out. Like, boy, we tried this. It did not work because of this, or we tried this and we had moderate success. So we're going to go ahead and tweak a few things. So we're really kind of looking at this as a cohort of learners to kind of learn from each other on this whole thing.
Yeah, our issue is that, of course, we would never take away the recess or their specials. That's not happening. But, our colleagues do not want this during the day. They already feel like their instructional time with them is important. They really don't want them on a computer with a stranger. It makes more work for them to have to set the whole thing up. It is very time consuming. And so, it's almost like saying, yes, they need more, but we're going to take them away from you and put them with a stranger online, so they can have tutoring, which nobody is in favor for, in our district. So we're just kind of looking at what sort of, we put a pause on this big time because we don't have a very good handle on what this is, who it is, and nobody wants to give up their time with their students. It's almost like, that's our job. I'm not going to give part of my job to a complete stranger. It's outsourcing what we do. So that's our big hurdle for our district. So we're not sure what we're going to do with this.
I agree. I know when I was in the classroom, those were my kids, and so I
Absolutely.
understand what they're saying. And also, like, when is it time to pull them where they're not going to miss a core in something, right?
Exactly.
So it's tough. Penny brings up another good point, and she is absolutely correct, is that these also have to be, these high dosage tutoring sessions need to be in very small groups, like preferably 1 to 3, 1 teacher to 3 students or less, even one-on-one. So they're very, very small groups, which also compounds the problem for manpower. Thank you for sharing that, Penny.
Debbie, can I ask a question?
Please.
Does the legislation say that we just have to provide the opportunity for, but we're not responsible for ensuring that all students are receiving, or we have to make sure they're receiving it? Because if we do it after school, if we're providing the opportunity, how do we guarantee that those students are going to be there? But if we're providing that opportunity, are we meeting the requirements?
Mhm. That's a great question. That came up in a way too of where, what if a child misses a lot? So they're absent all the time. And so, yeah, the opportunity was there, but they weren't there. So that's also problematic. My understanding is it's the opportunity. Could I be wrong? Yes. So what Nick has on there is some of the resources available from the DEW on this. And I also, on your Padlet, if you have access to it, if you could pull up, I linked in the resources for today, I linked a resource that I pulled right off the department that says frequently asked questions about budget bill changes to the 3rd grade reading guarantee. If you could pull that up. I use this a lot as my reference point. Is everybody able to find that? Give you a minute.
You want me to pull that up, Deb?
Yeah, maybe so they could see what it looks like.
Are you seeing that?
I am seeing it. Okay, so that's what you're looking for. So it has some basic question. What is the science of reading? Has the third grade reading guarantees retention provision been eliminated? Which it has not, but we do have that out with parents. The part that I think about with the parent portion where they can move it on is the equity piece. So if you have parents that are knowledgeable about this, they will probably advocate for their child to be moved on to fourth grade. But what about the children who don't have anybody to advocate for them? That is something I think for districts to think about as well. But there's a section then on that second page where it talks about high dosage tutoring, how it's being paid for, et cetera. So if you want to pull that up, and I am going to put in the chat box, I'm going to see if this works. A Jamboard. And what I want to do is just take a moment to look over this document, and then in the Jamboard, I have got a few pages for you to put some sticky notes on for some of your questions. See if I can pull it up here.
We need access to open up the Jamboard.
Of course you do.
Technology at its finest.
Technology is great. I swear I had that. Anybody with the link. All right, let me see if I can get that up to do that. And if we can't, we'll just talk about it. Take a minute and just read it over for right now. Okay, try it now and see if you can open it. No, Heidi's saying no. Okay, well, forget it. We're wasting too many minutes on this then. Let's take a look at it then. And I want to start collecting some of your questions that you have about this high dosage tutoring. So that was the first question. After you look at this document, what questions do you have?
I think one is identifying who is a quality tutor. What does that look like? Can we use high school students? Do we have to use a teacher? Does it, like, what does that look like?
Okay.
Also, if we are aligning it to the classroom curriculum, what are we doing to close the gaps or the pieces that they're missing that might be the foundation that's keeping them from accelerating in the gen ed curriculum?
Okay. Any other questions about this?
I think another one is just when, I mean, we're already pulling, these are students that are probably already being pulled for title services or additional intervention, and then we're being asked, and it's not, I mean, to provide this tutoring on top of that, and like, that's great, but these poor kids are already being pulled and asking to do all of this extra stuff already because we know that they're behind and they have deficits, and now we're putting one more thing on these poor kids, and like, yeah, I see the value of it, but how much is too much for these students? And when do we say enough isn't, you know, like, not that enough is enough, but like, how much can we put on these poor kids, especially in grades K, you know, 1, 2, and 3, because we're still providing all these additional things. Sorry.
I do think that's something to think about, you know, just like, you know, not losing recess and not like it shouldn't be seen as a punishment because I'm struggling. So, you know, how do we create the systems so that it isn't seen that way? And we're not completely burning them out. Like, so that's going to be really important for our work going forward, is kind of thinking through this now and putting plans in place. Any other questions about that?
I was gonna say, another question I know my district has had is the cost. Like, cause we are using Amplify for our high quality tutoring, and when we saw it said that every student on the RIMP needs it. And so then we had to add, like, cause we have a state grant that gave us so many seats. And then we had to add to those seats, and the cost that is attached to this is crazy too.
Yeah, and it does say in this, as you can see in that document that I shared with you, that districts and schools are responsible for paying for the tutoring services.
Well, I think we also have to figure out that if they continue to be on a RIMP through those higher grade levels, grade 4, 5, 6, even into, you know, junior high or even higher, because it's implying they are going to have a RIMP until they pass the state test. And then the qualifying factor for the RIMP then mandates that they have to have the high dosage tutoring. So it's not going to be just in elementary, it's going to move forward with them. I mean, in a perfect world, we are identifying the struggling reader and we're getting them the help they need and closing the gap, and that we don't have anyone struggling anymore. But until this is perfected, and I think we're going to have a lot of people, and we're going to continue to need to service many students. And I don't think any of us have the answer, unfortunately.
We don't have an answer yet. So I feel like we are a group of very intelligent educators, and I'm not giving up. There is a way. We just don't know what it is yet. And it's going to take all of us together to kind of figure this out.
In Mommy, we started using one of the highly qualified tutor vendors off of DEW's list. But I don't know that I've watched a few of the sessions. It's an online tutoring program. I don't think that they are necessarily using the science of reading or using the assessments that they did at the very beginning in order to be giving the kids exactly what they need for this tutoring as well. So they're getting it, but I don't know. And the kids are enjoying it. It's not that they're not liking what they're doing. It's just, I don't know that it is providing the reading that they need in order to improve their scores.
So Penny, can I ask you, is it a vendor that it's like a live tutoring session with a live person on the other side, or is it a recorded type intervention?
It's a live session. Am I allowed to say what it is?
Yeah.
It's Varsity Tutors. So there is a live person, and our kids are in a room together, but they all have headsets on and they are interacting with the tutor, but they're all in the same classroom. So the kids are in the classroom together with this person. And they're doing reading things, but it's the session I watched on third graders, it was just round robin reading where they were each reading just a paragraph and then answering questions. And these are kids that need phonemic awareness and phonic work, and they can't even read the passages. And in the second grade group that I was watching, one of the teachers every single day was glitching out. The kid looked at me and he's like, this happens every single day. And she would, like, her internet service was not good. And so the teacher or the assistant that was in charge of the group is keeping track of how many times this is happening. So we're paying for a service that the kids are not even getting their full tutoring sessions because the tutor's there, but they can't see or hear her sometimes. And that's on the state approved list. So that has me a little concerned.
And Penny, to your point, Toledo's putting the brakes on because they'd like to come in as well, and they're not cheap. And we have many more students than you do, and that's our concern. How do you know that these people know what they're doing? Like, who's setting the bar for what they're doing, and are they going to do it, like you said, the internet problems. I'm on LinkedIn. I see them advertising all the time for Varsity Tutors. And what's the requirement and what does their training look like? And if I saw them doing round robin reading, I would yank those headphones off and say, you're done. That hurts my heart. That's terrible. Like, who's watching these people? This is just our tax money being outsourced for nonsense. I mean, sorry, but there's got to be a better way to go about this than wasting our tax dollars. Just my personal opinion, of course.
Well, I think that's going to mean the importance of us vetting the materials ourselves. Because I really feel at this point, we have a lot of knowledgeable educators who can vet, like Penny Maria, like, that round robin reading isn't appropriate or effective. And so I guess not blindly accepting it off of a list, that maybe we'll need to do a vetting ourselves. I also think that's great feedback to provide, this is what you're seeing. I would definitely send it to the department that's what you're seeing with this particular approved vendor. I know I will be sending it, but the more of us that send it, the better, I think. Is anybody currently trying to do this right now? Is anybody making an attempt to provide this high dosage tutoring above and beyond interventions that children are already getting? I would love to hear how that's going.
Eden is just setting it up right now with, like I said, our Amplify, which is our M class who we do dibbles with. So our principal just set us a schedule yesterday for kids and when they were getting pulled. So it hasn't officially started, but we are trying to get it started.
Okay, so Katie, can you give us more information on that, on how this is working with your whole system?
We don't quite know quite yet. That was we, like I said, our principals looking at it, we got some grant, like I said, from the state that provided us so many seats using one of the groups on the list. We went with Amplify because we already use Amplify for our M class for our Dibbles reporting. And it hasn't started with the kids. We have been in this process since August, trying to get kids set up and in it and figuring out when we can pull them, what groups could be set up, how we could do this. And like I said, that's where when everyone on a RIMP had to go through it, we went through and said, how can we access more seats? And then we're given the cost. And we were like, this is crazy outrageous. We don't know how we can cover it. So we're still very much in the beginning process of it. So I can't give you a ton of information, but
So how are you pulling
hopefully
kids?
it's going to get started.
That's awesome. So how are you, so you've got kids, everybody's getting their core, and then they're getting
Yes.
intervention, right?
Yes, they
And
come to
then-
title with me, usually those kids, and then they are still going to get pulled for a half an hour, 3 days a week to do an online tutoring session. And I haven't seen how the tutoring sessions are going to happen yet. We are being told it's a person sitting there with them, but they're on the computer with them, so.
So how are you working it schedule wise so they're not missing core?
That's been my principal's job. Like I said, we just got the email yesterday saying this group's getting pulled here and this group's getting pulled here. So I do not know. One of our aides is going to get pulled from working with kids or helping kids in the classroom to be with them in this location to supervise all of this happening. It's a mess, but we're trying.
So we're going to be anxious to hear how this goes, whether it goes well or not. Like, we can all learn, and this is going to be messy. I think we need to kind of put our arms around that. This is going to be very messy work for a while, figuring this out, and we can learn from each other's wins and each other's struggles. So we're going to look forward to hearing how that's going, Katie. Thank you for sharing. Is anybody else, other district, trying this at all yet?
Can I ask a question, Debbie?
Please.
We haven't started ours yet, but I thought the whole part of the new dyslexia training is that we're not supposed to be doing something different than what the child is already exposed to, so that they get something in tier 1, they get something different in tier 2, and they get something now different in this the high quality tutoring. That is, I can think of immediately little people that will struggle tremendously with that, and they would not be able to make the connection from each of those platforms, especially if one of the platforms that they're using never assess them to see where their deficit is in the first place. They're just broad projecting that out there. So I feel like that is one of the main things, and I keep preaching that to colleagues, that we need to be reteaching, slower pace, repetitive pace, that they will get it. And they are getting it, and they are improving. But now to say that districts are putting their students, in a room on a laptop with a headset, they're not going to grow from that. They're not going to overcome deficits. I mean, we're doing what the state is asking us to do. I mean, it sounds like that's what they're doing, and that's the whole reason behind it. But I don't think that you're going to see growth the way they're wanting it to happen.
Well,
That's just
I believe that is why when they're looking at what high dosage tutoring should look like, it should be connected to the classroom. And I guess that is one of the things I think as district leaders need to think about is like, all right, so this is what they're learning in the classroom. Now their tier 2, tier 3 instruction is, we're aligning those interventions so that we're really building on those deficits that we're seeing in core instruction, that they need, like you said, Carol, they need more repetitions. Maybe it needs to be even more explicit for them to get it. and they need lots and lots of repetitions, which we're doing. And then this high dosage tutoring, should be, if they have 1-to-1 or 1-to-3 ratio, it should all be connected. Vocabulary, like what vocabulary are we using through all these interventions? Also, they need to be alike so that kids don't think they're learning something different just because they're using different terminology. So all of that is really important things to be thinking about.
I have a question for Penny. Penny, we were told that, in talking about the connection from the classroom to the tutor, like what do they really need? What are they supposed to be doing? What's the deficit? Which obviously would not be round robin reading, had to be set up by the teacher. That we have to set up, like, here's what they need to be doing. Here's what we're working on. Did you find that to be the case, or did they just come in and do it?
So Varsity Tutors was an online assessment, and the kids did it. They gave them the access to it. And when they did the assessment, teachers were not eligible to see any of the results of that. In fact, my director of teaching and learning and I sat in a meeting with Varsity Tutors, and we asked them if we could look at the results, because they weren't even providing the results to us. And so they did eventually provide that. They're like, oh, that's a great idea. And we also shared how some of our students, our second grade students, it took them an hour and a half to take this test. And I just said, these kids were trying really hard to read the text. And if they're already struggling, they couldn't really read it. Shouldn't the questions like time out, like on a STAR assessment? And again, they were like, oh, that's a great idea. Well, we'll look into that. I was like, okay. So I don't know that Varsity Tutors really understood everything about it. And so now one of my jobs is to go through and look at what these kids' deficits are on both the STAR and on this Varsity Tutor assessment, and try to make sure that they're getting what they need to be getting out of this high dosage tutoring. So it's a lot of work on our end that we were sold it would all take place through Varsity Tutors, and that's not what's happening.
Yeah, we're finding out that, all of this is going to fall back on our colleagues as well. That this is just a little Band-Aid to take some tax dollars and make millions, and not really solve our students' issues and support them. And Heidi, I see you shaking your head like, why wouldn't you share that data with us? Like, that's just sketchy. That's sketchy practice. That's crazy. Thank you, Penny. I'm glad we have some information from you so we can take that back and share that. Thanks.
Ellen Taylor shared in the chat, they're providing high dosage tutoring with an intervention specialist in first grade and with a retired intervention specialist who comes 3 days a week for second grade. We are using Orton Gillingham methods tied to our tier 1.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, my camera is not detectable for some reason. So that's why you can't see me. But we just created a schedule for first and second grade where we already had an intervention specialist in place last year who would pull and work with first graders. So we just identified those students from our iReady, which is our tier 1 screener. Students who needed the high dosage tutoring, and then we hired a part-time teacher. She's a retired intervention specialist. She comes back and works with our second graders 3 days a week. And then in addition to that, we have the 21st Century Grant for before and after school. So we've hired teachers who also teach the Orton Gillingham, and it's tied back to the goals of the tier 1 instruction.
And then what are you using for like tier 2?
We're also using Orton Gillingham for that. well, that is our tier 2. The teachers use some Orton Gillingham in class, but we mainly use Sadlier phonics and Hegarty for our phonemic awareness. So during the tier 2 time, they're getting a stronger dose of that phonemic awareness, and then they're getting a stronger dose of the Orton Gillingham for the phonics.
Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
Amy, can you share what you put in the chat? Would you mind?
Sure. Some of the schools I'm working with are using the UFly, the University of Florida Literacy Institute program, and they're connecting it directly to the 95% or collaborative classroom they're using, and that's their tier 1 programs. And they are paying their teachers to do it, or their student teachers as well. They offered it to the student teachers, and they're taking advantage of it because that means that they don't have to waitress or, you know, waiter in the afternoon. Now they can do the tutoring instead. They are offering it before or after, but they are doing it in-house just because they were not either a fan of what the online program said that they could do, or they just found it was not cost effective. So I know that the schools I am working with, and they've seen a lot of growth with that UFly program. And what's nice about that, it's $90 a manual, and then all the resources are online for free. And so that's just a great program to use. And so that's what I have found some of the schools have used. And I know that the before and after school, that can be a barrier to some families. That's why they did it before or after, you know, depending on what is easier for the families. And I do know that getting staff to do it can be difficult because staff, you know, we are facing that high burnout rate, but having student teachers do it is great because you do know the quality of who those student teachers are. This gives them a little bit more experience with some of that structured literacy. So when they are, you know, full-time teachers, they already have that experience, and that has seemed to work out for the districts I work with.
Amy, can I ask a question? Transportation with that, are any of the districts offering transportation to or from school if that's before or after, if students are staying to help with participation?
No, they are not offering transportation. They looked into possibly transportation to some of the like daycare sites that the students go to. And if they had students from certain daycare sites, those daycare student sites said that they would come and pick up the students if that was something that I could work out. But none of the students from those daycare sites actually are either staying or are part of the students who needed that high quality tutoring.
Thank you.
So of those of you who shared, are those programs all happening within the school day? Or are any of you venturing before or after school? Penny's shaking her head yes, so it's during the school day, Penny? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We do have an after-school program as well that we do invite students to, but not everyone can attend because even though we provide a meal and we provide transportation to that after-school program, not many of our at-risk students or our RIMP students are going to that, but it's being offered. So are we providing the high dosage tutoring by offering it? But we really would like to see our scores raised. So we're trying to figure out how to do it during the day.
Mhm.
We have the before and after school also, and we do provide transportation. I'm not sure if we do before school, but I know we do after school. And then those intervention specialists or our part-time one, they pick up the slack for the kids who aren't able to come before or after school.
Okay, thank you for sharing. So I think this is something that we're going to need to continue to explore and talk about. I think we'll go ahead and we'll just go to, can we keep moving? Yeah, okay, the new Science of Reading PD, just really quickly. If you've not heard about this, there's going to be a new requirement that all teachers and administrators must attend this Science of Reading professional development. There will be a stipend for that. And it must be completed by June 30th of 2025. Now, there is a caveat. If teachers or administrators have already attended a course that covers the same type of material, but it has to be approved by the department, they would not have to take this course. I have no information on how long the course is, or I don't have any of that information yet. Last I heard is that teachers get stipends, but administrators do not. I don't quite understand that, but that's the way it's sitting right now. And that the state will be paying for that. So we'll be touching on that. Really don't have much more information. So just to put this, if you haven't heard of it, just to put this on your radar that it is coming, and to kind of be thinking about that.
Do we know what grade levels this would be?
I believe it is for all teachers, preschool through 12.
So if they already went through the online dyslexia modules, for that required PD, would that count towards that, or is it something separate?
I do not know.
Okay.
I think I know a little bit, and I was trying to look to see whether it was 30 hours or 36 hours. I can't remember which one. But they did say if the teachers have completed the dyslexia training, it would take 9 hours off that requirement.
Even though it's an 18-hour training?
Correct.
Okay.
I was in a meeting and I heard the same thing. I was told that was unofficial, but I did hear the same thing, that the dyslexia modules that many of the teachers have completed online will not count for the whole training. It's only going to count for part of it. And yeah, so I did hear the same thing, but again, they said that it wasn't an official yes or no, but that was something that they did mention.
Okay, so we'll put that on the radar as information comes out. We won't wait to share. Like as new things come out, we'll be sending like a little some maybe newsletters for this network, so that as I'm hearing about it, I will share it. But I think many of you are even getting it ahead of me. So we just want to make sure that everybody has the information. We have no idea when the 412 dyslexia modules are going to be ready. So if we can go down to the looking ahead slide, Nick, since we are just 1 minute out. So Nick and I are working on a book study to be done, and it's Upstream, if you've ever heard of it. This will be done sometime after the new year, but we're just thinking ahead of how many books we might need to order for those that might like to participate in this. So it's looking at, so if, for example, if doctors keep treating all of these issues, but do we ever look at what's causing the issues to happen in the first place? So it's kind of like with our struggling readers, we keep kind of with our high dosage tutoring and our tier 2 and our tier 3 and all these things that we're doing. Can we stop for a moment and look back as to why do we have so many kids that need all of these additional supports, and what can we be more proactive about so it doesn't happen? So this book isn't specifically for education, but we're going to be looking at it through that lens. So we'll be sending out a survey here before the holidays, before the Christmas holidays, just to get an idea of how many people might be interested in this, so that we can start getting some books ordered. Did you want to add anything to that, Nick?
No, I'm just excited to look at being proactive leadership, how that all fits together.
So we're thrilled to have Nick. He's our adolescent literacy specialist, and he also works with Toledo Public. So we're happy to have him on part of our literacy team here at State Support Team 1. So he's joining us. If we can go on, if you haven't registered for the Level Up for Literacy, the first issue just came out here just a little bit ago. And so it talks about leadership, and all of those things that we talked about today are all linked in there. So this Level Up with Literacy, we're trying to have it align with things that we are talking about, very timely issues that are impacting districts right now. So if you haven't subscribed, I would encourage you to do so. And if you don't get the link here, if you go to our website under newsletters, it is there right under our e-brief as well. Okay. And the next slide. Okay. All we have left is the survey. If you could take a moment to fill that out, we would greatly appreciate it. I thank you for your time and your intention and your discussion. I feel like that's so helpful, and that's the whole point of networking, right? Is that we have these conversations together so we can learn from each other. So I thank you for your time, and I apologize. I know we're a minute over, but thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Deb. Hey, can you possibly drop a link for that survey in? Because my camera's struggling. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, Nick's getting it. I see it. Okay, Christine, the attendance one wasn't working. So Christine, we're just going to use the Zoom. When you log into Zoom, we have a record of that. So we'll just use that. No worries. You'll all get your certificates.
Debbie, you had a slide there that you kind of sped through about the ELA curriculum. Could you put that back on the screen, please?
Yeah.
I want to take a look at that again. Thank you.
Yeah, we didn't even get to that.
I guess my question is, I've had people asking about, you know, DEW put out some FAQs lately here about the ELA curriculum and a timeline, et cetera. And it had something on there about the immediate approval, something about if it is meets or partially meets the alignment requirements, it's going to be immediately approved for the list. Does anybody know anything more about that? Or are we still waiting?
As far as I know, we are still waiting. I believe that vendors can still submit to be looked at, to be added to that list, and they're being vetted. Last we heard is that list probably will not be ready until February-ish, is the last we have heard. I did get clarification. There has been two things going around. That one is that this new material, now this one's talking about reading intervention, but it's also for core as well. Okay, so for core instruction, you'll need to select off that list, and it needed to be implemented at the beginning of the 24-25 school year. That is not correct. As of the most recent information that I received, it has to be implemented sometime during the 24-25 school year. So, you know, we all have to go through that whole selection process, which I think we're going to be talking about next time, of kind of what needs to go into that selection process. Not just, you don't want to get into the same situation, which some of you are in now with the high dosage tutoring, where you've got one that may not be the best fit for you. So we want to make sure, even though the department is creating a list, we want to make sure we're still vetting it. All right. And then we need to make sure we have time to get the materials, the time to train our teachers, the time to put an implementation process together, and then get that out. So as long as it is any time during the 24-25 school year, and that goes for core and intervention materials. There is some guidance that's starting to leak out about how it's going to be subsidized. I'm not going to touch that right now because it's just slowly leaking out. And some of you probably have more information than I do about that as well, as to what districts will qualify for the subsidy and which may not. For example, I've heard that if you've already purchased a curriculum that's aligned to reading science and is on this list, you will not be refunded that money. So things like that.
Can I just add something, Debbie?
Please, yes,
Um,
please.
You know, although the list won't be available until February, for those of you who have the time and the space to begin talking, you know, if you already know that, you know, we haven't bought curriculum in, you know, some time and we'll probably do anyway. You know, those conversations can start now in terms of building a vision for literacy instruction. Ed Reports is a partner organization that is building that list, and you can go on Ed Reports and start looking at, you know, where our vision and where our priorities line up with, you know, what these different vendors offer in their programs. So, you know, we would encourage you to be as proactive as you can be with the knowledge that we have. So just wanted to plug that.
I think that's great advice. We don't want to wait. Thank you for sharing that. Can we put the survey link back up as well?
And then I did throw a link for the survey in the chat as well.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody. Have a great holiday.
Sorry.